I've got a fever. And it's called Resident Evil 4 Remake. Welcome back. Resident Evil 4 Remake is a game I haven't stopped thinking about or really playing since I got it early for review. From its seemingly endless replayability, plethora of Easter eggs, its high-action survival horror combat, unlockables.
That looks really good on you.
Well, I'm flattered.
And Mercenaries DLC game mode that is just pure fun. I can't put it down. In my spoiler-free review, I talked a lot about RE4R's gameplay, but one thing that's been keeping my mind busy is how Capcom drastically improved RE4's story in this new dark and grounded retelling. Today we'll be diving deep into the events of the Los Illuminados incident, analyzing the game's level design and all of the stories contained within this fine religious community. I'll also be going into my own personal interpretations of specific things that I thought were really cool. There will be major spoilers in this video, so if you haven't played this game yet, you might want to get out of here. This is basically a video of me gushing over this title's narrative. And if you didn't like it because it wasn't soulful enough for you, well, hopefully I can help you see from a different perspective. So what do you say, Sancho? Let's head back into haunted Valdelobos and dissect this twisty parasite.
Resident Evil 4.
I love how this game starts with a meaningful flashback of Leon's life up to this point. Leon recounting the tragedy of Raccoon City and his forced recruitment into government military work is what RE4 2005 should have focused on instead of recapping the downfall of Umbrella. The off-screen death of this series' villainous corporation we all wanted to take down in a mainline game, but never could because of time and budget, was always pretty lame to me. Actually getting to see and hear Leon talk about this stuff in something that isn't supplemental material is kinda like a dream come true. If you've been following my coverage on this remake, you'll know that what I wanted out of this title was a bit more focus on Leon's trauma of surviving RE2. And man, does this game deliver on that front. When Nobuo Sugimura wrote Leon Kennedy in the original RE2, he wrote a character obsessed with truth, justice, and a deep desire to help those in need. Something Leon sadly never really did in that game. Leon, being perfectly played by the late great Paul Haddad, came off as this altruistic, bright-eyed rookie cop with big dreams. In RE4, we get a very cool take on the character, also perfectly played by the legend Paul Mercier. This guy was extremely confident out of the gate, and while I do find him very cool, this version of Leon never felt like that same guy from RE2 1998. Capcom actually casting the same person for RE2 and 4 Remake, Nick Apostolidis, has kind of made Resident Evil history by finally giving us a consistent, well-thought-out take on this iconic character. It actually feels like this particular guy has gone through so much that we don't see between the two games, but can infer by his drastic transformation in personality. Going from hopeful police officer out to save the world to tired secret agent who failed to save the city and people he swore to protect is phenomenal character progression. Seeing Leon meet with President Graham and training with Krauser is great for showing us what he's been up to after RC, but what really hit me in the heart was getting to see Leon thinking about people like Marvin Branagh, Robert Kendo, and Ada Wong. RE2 Remake having Leon fail to save a lot of people like Elliot, Marvin, Kendo, Annette, William to an extent, and Ada, as well as the entire city he swore to protect, was genius for helping flesh out what happens in RE4 Remake. Robert, Marvin, and Ada being the most impactful losses really shaped who Leon would become in RE4R. The knife that Leon uses was given to him by his first fallen lieutenant Marvin. Leon's signature pistol, the Silver Ghost, is a sidearm custom made by Joseph Kendo, Robert's brother. Joseph owned the second Kendo gun shop in San Francisco. This detail about Leon's gun was always part of the original lore, but getting that hard-hitting moment in RE2R of Robert desperately trying to protect his dying daughter, and imagining Leon wanting to make up for that says a lot about him here. Sort of bringing the pain of losing Kendo and Marvin into battle with him adds necessary depth to our leading man. Ada arguably had the most devastating effect on Leon's psyche, using Leon to further her own mission. I can only imagine how used Leon felt during the 6 years between the games. This is a guy who's been beaten down by the world and his own insecurities. He's grown cynical, but he still holds on to the moments that shaped him into the person he is now. And maybe with this new mission, things can finally be different. The actual game opens very similarly to the original, with Leon on the search for Ashley Graham, his president's missing daughter. Leon's still being driven to Ashley's potential location, according to eyewitness accounts. The officers mention hikers going missing around these parts frequently. The cops are still as incompetent as ever, as one wanders off into the dark woods alone after taking a piss. Leon follows after him, and I gotta say, the blue-tinted walk to the first villager's house is stunning. Hearing all the little atmospheric sounds in the woods shuffling around as you pass by dilapidated shacks, animal remains, and trees that look like they were planted in hell eases you into the horror you're about to come face to face with. It's great seeing the starting shack no longer be a shack, but a house. This time Leon announces his presence, and speaks Spanish to the villager once he appears, even apologizing for barging in on him like this. It doesn't take long finding the officer's badge covered in blood. Leon gets attacked and defends himself with a smooth knife parry, letting you, as the player, know that this is going to be your best friend in this game. It also follows up that cool Krauser intro showing Leon's new skills. The training's paying off, rookie. Leon ends this man's life with the most unhinged spinning back kick I've ever seen. Imagine just killing a man like this. I'd be more horrified at myself than the potential murderers I was about to deal with. In the house's basement, we find the body of the officer and hear the other one getting dragged out of his car over comms. Returning to the stairs is when the deceased villager rises from the grave, powered up by a hidden threat. What I like the most about this encounter is, as an experienced Resident Evil fan, I and many of you know exactly what this is. To a new player who may have only played the RE Engine games, they might think this is a T-virus infected human that is becoming a zombie. They have no idea what they're getting themselves into. Leon finds a photo of Ashley and a map inside of a hidden room on the house's second floor. Very cool, making that oddly disconnected staircase from the original game an actual hidden part of the house. Here we get to see Hunnigan, and it's so nice hearing these two use call signs to conceal their identities. After making a great escape, we're back slowly moving through the woods, taking in all of the beautifully grim scenery as the sun rises. I really like how the new walk to the village's town square shows us more unkempt man-made architecture. Whoever's living in these parts have stopped taking care of this place a long time ago. A few villagers jump Leon on the path as he reaches the town's main gate. A few spiked heads can be seen adorning the threshold. Oh, hi! The village raid is as intense, if not more, than the original game, just with how aggressive every enemy acts now. I still got the very same horrified feeling facing down these villagers as I did back in 2005. The Chainsaw Man's unshakable presence, slowly approaching Leon, using his saw as a shield, had my heart racing. The amount of new things that happened to me in this upgraded encounter was pretty staggering for myself being a 19-year RE4 veteran. I was seriously caught off guard from things like actual stealth kills, falling through the Bell's tower floor, La Vaca catching fire, taking out villagers, and the plethora of ways these old coots can combo you into oblivion and brutally kill you in the process. It's loud, it's bombastic, it's very fun. Nothing will top my jaw hitting the floor hearing the iconic bell ring in normal gameplay. You're just going off, trying so desperately to stay alive, and then each villager just stops in their tracks, dropping whatever death sticks they were using against Leon to his and my own confusion. It's a more natural transition into the following cutscene, and creates an eerie vibe seeing these once feral people now calmly and mindlessly walk into the town's church.
Tenemos que servir.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Like I mentioned in my spoiler-free review, the structure of the village is still a linear series of chapters. There are points of no return at the ends of certain levels, but the way each part of the village has been redesigned, I think makes for a more believable game world compared to the original RE4. Much like the incredibly atmosphere-rich intro we just went over, every part of the village is steeped in dark horror ambiance and detail. A lot of areas are exactly the same, or in some cases more claustrophobic, or even play backwards. Before we get into level design, however, I just want to take a minute to express how beautiful the village is in this remake. I love seeing all of these classic buildings and forest paths now fully furnished. I like how even if we don't get to explore certain parts of this place, we see signs of life just out of bounds. A great example of this is in the opening village raid. We see ganados flood into the village, jumping down from a bridge connected to one of the explorable houses and over the fences that lead into the brush. It's like there are actual hidden pathways that these people are taking advantage of to get the drop on you. It's great for building up the immersion of the battle, while showing us that this area is more dense than we think. I love how immediately mountainous the remake village is as well. As far as the eye can see, there are giant mountain vistas, which create this isolated feeling. This is a community hidden deep within a forest. You feel like you're very far away from modern civilization. Even though we don't get to ride it like in the original RE4, the gondola system can still be seen. When you get to that one area housing Luis, it's no longer a tiny little corner of a forest, but a dock with tons of wrecked ships. This place now leads into the lake, showing you the scale of the area. And to my absolute shock, we even see a portion of Salazar's castle this early in the game. It's careful foreshadowing like this that so perfectly catches a seasoned Resident Evil fan like myself off guard, while also showing you what's to come. There are tons of little details in the village now, and I can't help but just gush over this stuff. Like, outside of the church where Ashley's being held, there's a graveyard. Right across from it is a shed. This little shed was always in the classic RE4, but it had nothing in it but a single table and a shelf. Now it's literally the Undertaker's workshop. Coats hung up on hooks, bundles of rope spooled around the ceiling support beams, tools lining the walls, and of course, an unused coffin. The environmental storytelling is just so awesome. It's the kind of thing I've dreamed about seeing in RE4 for years. If anything was missing from that game's presentation, it was filling out the areas with detail like this. Fun fact, the village Undertaker is named Fernando, and here's a picture of him. I know. Very handsome. I don't know why, but I was so amazed seeing the farm animals actually move around. I've been living with RE4 for like 19 years, seeing those cardboard cutout cows just vibing. Speaking of cows, in the barn, we actually get introduced to a brand new enemy type, the Beast Man, or as I like to call him, La Vaca Loca. I know it's a mask, but I want to believe the Plaga just made these guys into weird animal-headed freaks. After Leon and Luis get captured, that one prison they're moved to is now in the abandoned Ironworks factory, the area on the other side of the valley in the original game. Both ladders that led down into the fish pool and up to Mendez's house are broken. It's like we're in an alternate reality where things actually make sense. Once we escape the factory, we get to meet up with the merchant and approach the valley from its opposite side. Seeing this place from a top-down perspective was breathtaking, spotting all the villagers and plotting my course of action only to ultimately get blasted by some dynamite thrower off in the distance. A few other areas play out backwards like this, and I think what Capcom did here is one of the better ways to mix up a familiar set piece rather than changing it completely like some of their previous remakes. The village chief's house gets the same treatment, and man was I caught off guard by Mr. Chainsaw sneaking up behind me. By the way, I've got a bit of a theory as to why the Chainsaw Man keeps showing up in this game, but I'll let myself from Did You Know Gaming's episode on RE4 explain. Did you know? In an early Japanese demo of Resident Evil 4, next door to the shotgun house, there's a framed picture of the Chainsaw Man with his mask off and his back turned. If you walk up and inspect it, the description says, it's the local legend, the Chainsaw Man. No matter how many times you kill him, he keeps coming back. They say he was actually the richest man in the village. In the release version, collecting Chainsaw Man's bottle cap in the shooting gallery reveals his real name is Dr. Salvador. So maybe he's the town doctor, and that's how he got so rich. It's not entirely clear though, because little else is known about the mysterious Chainsaw Man. His photograph could only be seen in the Biohazard 4 Trial Edition demo, but it got cut from later demos as well as the game's final release. Thanks, Susie. My little headcanon for Remake Chainsaw Man is Capcom reinstating this cut piece of lore from the original. And there's a cool moment later related to this that I'll dive into more. The swamp area leading to Del Lago is now a real fish farm. I really liked how in the original game, you can kind of tackle that area in a few different ways due to its elevation in its level design. Here, the fish farm is a maze to get a key item. You still have to deal with different elevations with enemies sniping you from afar, which I thought was really cool. It's just awesome that this area is a defined place now instead of a weird swamp with a few bridges and completely unfurnished shacks dotted along the water. Speaking of water, man, look at all those cute fishies. I can shoot them and sell them to the merchant. That's right, get over here, you little flippers. I'm happy that it's still in the game, but it does not hit as hard as the OG Del Lago jump scare. I'm not sure why they made it a cutscene with a transition, but you know, whatever. The originals is way more shocking. The boss fight, on the other hand, is awesome. It's the same as the OG game, with a few new tricks like the monster free willy jumping and taking so much more damage. Seriously, replaying RE4 Classic after this remake was like playing the game on very easy mode. The spectacle is so over the top, but I will say the original game has the swimming quicktime event over not being able to fall off the boat at all. Huge missed opportunity on Capcom's part to have the camera remain over Leon's shoulder while we desperately swim back to the boat hearing the monster screaming behind us. That would be genuinely terrifying. Del Lago's new theme is also unhinged. The horns are just going off every second. It sounds like something from Batman Forever. Holy flipping fish, Batman. Leon just got knocked onto Queer Street. After Del Lago, we get one of my favorite chapters, which is a full lake exploration, very similar to RE5's Marshlands level, just without all the sus energy. I feel this level's inclusion helps break up the tension in village set pieces. This chapter is basically find 2 key items to progress while exploring more of the area. You'll be finding a lot of treasures, a few gruesome scenes, and a lot of people's favorite gun, the Red 9. There are tons of side quests you can complete here, and even backtrack to places like the Lakeside Settlement and Fish Farm to open locked areas and find cool new things. There's a great amount of world building in this chapter too, but we'll talk about that stuff in just a minute. This is probably the best place to finally gush about the merchant's new pirate-themed shooting gallery. In the original RE4, the shooting gallery was fun, but it's only something I ever played a few times in all of my years going through that game. Here, the charm of this minigame is cranked up to 11, and feels like something the merchant actually set up in his bougie underground apartment. The actual challenge of each game is really fun, some of each needing certain conditions met to S-rank and achieve bonus time mode. Figuring each of these out was really fun, but not as fun as using earned tokens on the gallery's slot machine and unlocking RE4 2005's original character models as keychains for Leon's inventory case, technically bringing back the bottle caps from OG RE4's shooting gallery. These charms actually grant specific buffs, like crafting more ammo and making heals more potent. There's even a striker charm, which is no joke a reference to the Ditman glitch from the OG RE4. It makes you run faster just like the glitch from the original game. If that's not love and respect to not only the original game, but the community that's been playing it for 19 years, I don't know what is. RE4's legacy is front and center in this remake, and I absolutely love seeing it. The music here is also fantastic. The brand new flamenco band track that builds up as you get through the current set explodes into the original game's The Ride OST that crescendos beautifully into an amazing celebration of fan service. When I heard this extremely flamboyant remix of this classic track, my jaw hit the floor. By the way, my jaw is gonna hit the floor a lot throughout this video, so be warned. I was in utter ecstasy hitting that perfect S rank. This entire minigame is shockingly polished and kind of confirms that the merchant is a pirate. To be honest, I don't know why I never put 2 and 2 together. He doesn't exactly sound Spanish in the OG game or this one, so it makes perfect sense that this part of his backstory is finally on display in this cute little minigame. Like always, El Gigante's boss fight happens at the end of Chapter 4, but now takes place in the village's quarry. This is an entirely new area added to the game, and it just helps make the village make more sense. El Gigante can still be taken down in a variety of ways. Going at it with your guns, chopping up its back parasite, one-shotting him with a rocket, and oh yeah, let's back up a bit and go to chapter 3.
You too, huh? Take care of yourself, buddy.
Props to Capcom for moving Huey to chapter 3, but no props to all the people that fell for the bait that was the dead wolf in chapter 1. Like, you guys really think Capcom would kill off such an icon? Come on, dude. So Huey helps out more in this remake version of El Gigante's boss fight. He's got his typical distracting style, but after some time can also bite the giant's heel, forcing it to run into the quarry wall. I'll be honest, this is all like a dream come true to me. This pup getting a legitimate moment in the fight now, instead of just an intro and then disappearing into thin air, it means everything to me. Getting to hear Leon compliment this good little pal makes me so happy. After the fight, Huey even lounges, and Leon thanks him for his help.
Thanks, bud.
Dog aside, let's finally get into some character stuff, starting with everybody's favorite puckish RE rogue, Luis Serra. In this remake, we find Luis in the basement of a small ruinous cabin that appears to have been severely burnt. On the first floor, we find an old framed photo of a boy and an older man next to a bunch of scientific equipment you'd find in an elementary school science class. This cabin is small, but filled with what you'd find in a typical old family's home. Luis is now trapped inside of a sleeping bag and is as sassy to Leon as ever.
That hurts, you know? It seemed like you really wanted to talk.
The big cheese, Torres Mendez, still jumps Leon, catching him off guard and knocking him straight on his ass. This time, Mendez infects Leon as he passes out. What follows is one of the coolest scenes in the game.
Sacrificial lamb, you will receive our most sacred body. It begins now.
We get to see Sadler speak directly to Leon in some sort of dreamlike daze. It's similar to Sadler's intro in the original game, but it's clear that something more ominous is happening. As Leon snaps out of this delusion, we see him and Luis cuffed to a single chain suspended from the ceiling. An interesting and more painful way of being apprehended in a situation like this. I love how Luis playfully tries to get info out of Leon, while our main man focuses on breaking the contraption on the ceiling. A telling detail that emphasizes Leon's new cool-headed and straightforward outlook, likely developed through countless dire missions. I love the original conversation Leon and Luis had back in 2005, but something always felt a little too casual about it. Here, Leon just woke up, gearless, chained to a guy he just met, and who was acting extremely shady out of the gate. Like before, Luis catches Leon's attention by alluding to Ashley.
Missing, señorita? Young girl? Talk. Now.
No psychic powers in this room. Luis lets it slip that Ashley's been moved from the lakeside settlement to the village's old church. The ganado that tries killing Leon in the original game instead strikes at Luis, kind of planting a seed in your mind that maybe these people specifically want this guy dead as much as they want Leon out of their town. After a very kinky takedown, Luis uncuffs himself, leaving Leon alone. In the original RE4, Luis talks such a big game during his intro, right before running away from Leon like a coward. I always found that a little odd. Like, I get that you're free and you want to take your chance at escaping, but it always looked weird to me. Remake Luis deviously takes off, even taunting Leon on the way out. It immediately establishes an air of distrust in this guy, making you question what he's up to. It especially works now that we don't get the original lengthy conversation, where he tells us all about himself. As Leon recovers, he contacts Hunnigan, asking her to run a background check on our new friend. At the start of chapter 3, we get some interesting news about Luis.
It seems he used to be a researcher for Umbrella.
Umbrella? I should have left him in that bag to rot.
Leon, being a Raccoon City survivor, isn't too happy about this info, but me as a fan sure was. Making Luis a former Umbrella scientist was an amazing decision for not only enhancing his character, but RE4's story overall, and most importantly, finally making RE4 feel like a sequel to RE2. Adding that legit connection to the rest of this series right away like this is a lore fan's wet dream. Thankfully, the Umbrella name drop isn't all we get, as Hunnigan forwards her findings to us. The first notable thing we learn is Luis's full name, Luis Serra Navarro. We get to read about his untraceable childhood, making his way through the education system, basically being a genius. Luis worked on a ton of different projects for Umbrella that were mostly defunct, over-the-counter medications. Smells more like a cover-up to some truly evil projects. Whatever the case may be, it's likely Luis played a part in Raccoon City's destruction. A very good reason not to trust this guy. Before we go deeper into Luis's story, we've got to talk about the reason why we're in this rural part of Europe. After taking down the rampaging giant, Leon finally makes it to the village's old church. This place is sealed up tight with elaborate contraptions, but is eerily empty. After unlocking the second floor, we get to meet Ashley Graham, also known as Baby Eagle.
Just let me go.
Listen. Easy with that. My name's Leon. I'm here in the president's orders and... You need to listen to me.
What is that? Over there?
Pursue them. The lost lambs are escaping.
Perseguirles.
Deliver unto them salvation.
Yeah, I was floored watching this scene. Realizing Leon and Ashley are infected and also getting the same Sadler mind transmission that the Ganados see and obey without question is so existential and honestly scary. Piecing this info together with the previous Sadler visions recontextualizes those dreams as reality. It shows us that this is how Sadler breaks through to those infected. At such an early stage, his visions to Leon are a lot weaker, but the fact that he's getting through at all is a major problem. This is a much more threatening intro to our main villain than him standing 10 feet away from Leon explaining his entire plan and looking like a Saturday morning cartoon. Like, why doesn't Leon just shoot him in the original? Oh yeah, because RE4 released in the era of Resident Evil, where cutscenes removed all of a character's weapons, becoming a daytime drama instead. I was a little nervous when Ashley attacked Leon and then ran out of the room. I was like, please don't be mean and curse obsessively, please. Please, Ashley. Once Leon explains his government service, Ashley understands that this is probably her best bet at getting out of this alive, especially after that Sadler vision. It's an interesting reconfiguration of the original scene from 2005. You can feel through the performances that these characters get the severity of the situation, instead of having to be lectured at by comic book Sadler over here. Like I mentioned in my spoiler-free review, it's not just in the cutscenes where Leon and Ashley bond, but in gameplay as well. A lot of context-sensitive actions differ depending on where you are in the story. You get to feel how strong their bond becomes. Simple actions like boosting Ashley up to ledges, hearing Leon give her a direct order at the start, and then barely having to say anything by the end of the game. The scarier situations like Leon taking a near-death blow in combat and hearing Ashley scream out in fear for his safety makes for some very upsetting vibes, too. Ashley gets to shine in the next few major village set pieces, the first being the Villa Siege with Luis. I love how Leon is even more suspicious of Luis at this point, now knowing he's ex-Umbrella. Leon pins Luis against the wall demanding answers, right before the village descends on the pair. Putting his questions and their differences aside, Leon and Luis team up to hold back the horde. Luis and Leon help Ashley hide in a hole in the wall behind a cabinet.
Quick! Over here! Go. Okay. It's game time.
Remake Villa is a fantastic piece of overwhelming horror. Just like before, villagers flood in through every window, but you can now board up each of these bottlenecks as the fight goes on. Being trapped in such a tight space with a large amount of enemies is difficult, but Luis has got your back, actually doing his own damage, stunning enemies for you, throwing you ammo when you're low, and helping you break free from grabs. Hearing Luis joke around about the insanity unfolding before your eyes, and getting Leon's serious replies cuts through the tension of the fight in such a great way. Whether Leon likes it or not, their bond is forming, even in this moment. This set piece is much crazier now, having villagers flood through the windows until you board them up, only to have them sliding down the chimney like demonic Santa Claus. The in-game music revs up as the villagers eventually ladder their way up to the second floor. As the battle goes on, you can even hear the remaining horde outside creepily chanting along to the in-game music. If all of that wasn't intense enough, a beast man breaks through your barricade and becomes a mini boss fight. This updated set piece is like every single RE4 cabin-inspired set piece that has appeared in other games combined. It's so overwhelming, and you actually feel Leon and Luis struggling not only through their dialogue, but from the overwhelming Ganado force you deal with in gameplay. Everything culminates in Ashley's surprise unlocking the second floor's balcony door.
Leon! This way, hurry!
That's what I'm talking about, Ash. You show him. Leon and Luis barely make it out alive. This ending to this iconic set piece is so much better than the villagers just leaving like they did in the original RE4.
Looks like they're backing off.
Okay. Having Ashley seemingly sneak out of the villa and find the escape door shows us that she's capable in her own right. She's not a big, strong, wisecracking fighter like Leon and Luis, but she can still use her brain to figure things out if it means survival. I love what Capcom did with her in this title, and her moments only get better as we continue. Ashley begins coughing up blood. Luis enters Umbrella Scientist mode, explaining what Las Plaga is, and coming up with a plan that he isn't revealing yet.
The cough, the blood, is caused by something called plaga. But you have the same thing inside you. The same thing that made them like that.
I don't want to become like them.
You are, well, lucky. You see, at this early stage, the parasite, the plaga, it is possible to remove it with a surgical procedure. And all you need is some know-how. And oh yeah, the right equipment.
Wait, you two?
No worries. See, I have a plan. But you're going to have to trust me. Great, we're partners then.
Hey, why are you...
No time for any questions. The clock is ticking.
Why are you helping us?
Because it makes me feel better. Let's leave it at that.
This line is in the original game, but it carries more weight in this remake. In the original RE4, Luis had regrets for his contributions to the village's downfall and working with Sadler on researching and enhancing the Plaga. Remake Luis still has that and the Raccoon City incident weighing him down. He'd probably feel extra guilty if he only knew about Leon's history. I really like how the Plaga's revealed in this name drop. You can see the trepidation on Luis's face. He knows all too well the damage this parasite causes, even being a carrier himself at one point. The next scene kinda blew my mind, because it's actually a remixed version of a scene from OG RE4's Separate Ways. We get a pretty interesting interaction between Luis and Ada Wong. Look at her in all of her stunning glory. Ada mentions Luis getting something called the Amber for her. I immediately knew what she was talking about, knowing the original game so well. The Jurassic Park-inspired fossilized Plaga sample. It's funny how OG RE4's ancient Plaga resemble real-world fossils, while the remake ancient Plaga look exactly like they're from Jurassic Park. Both very cool, more on the Amber later. I love how Luis is acting here and how cold and distant Ada is in her replies. It's cute how he's kinda going off about whatever deal they both made, and how Ada just isn't giving him anything. I'm really hoping that this scene is expanded a bit in a hypothetical Separate Ways DLC, where Ada tells Luis about Leon's history in Raccoon City. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Out of every story told in the village, my favorite has to be the village's story itself, the downfall of Valdelobos. Like we've discussed, this game's recreation of the iconic village is very detailed and immersive, not to mention faithful. Along with all of the great environmental storytelling, as you explore this rundown town, you'll find diaries and notes that give us a glimpse into a community that once was. Most notably, the village chief's story, Torres Mendez. The timeline of events is a little fuzzy, but around the late 1970s, early 1980s, is when the former chief of the village retired from his life's work. An unknown priest whose disciple was ready to take up the mantle of chief. Learning the ropes of his responsibilities wasn't easy. Taking care of an entire town of people and making sure village resources never ran out was hard enough, but our young Torres couldn't even read or write, having to learn as he watched over the land. As Mendez grew, he made sure to take care of his people, teaching the children how to read and write and do math by day, and listening to a single family's grievances over dinner at his home every night. One child in particular was described as a genius, a boy who lived by the lake with his grandfather. The child's mother passed away giving birth, and whenever Mendez would visit this family, the lively boy would tell the chief stories about the books he'd been reading. One he was obsessed with was Don Quixote, a story he'd go on about while out hunting with his grandfather. The boy's grandfather didn't speak much, but he did respect Mendez for how well he was able to keep the village together. Valdelobos was an isolated community, and as time would pass, the village would suffer its own losses, whether that be people passing away, resources running low, or the rumored madness plaguing certain members of the community. This madness was thought to come from animals found in the forest. One day, the boy and older man were out hunting. Distracted by his grandson, the man took his eye off the brush and was attacked by a wolf. The days following, the man began to lose his mind, his wounds severely infected, hearing voices in his head. While Mendez tried helping the man get back on his feet, the situation worsened. The old man was going to die. Mendez and the rest of the village made the hard choice to contain this mysterious disease, burning down the man's home. The man's grandson watched in silence as the house burned, not moving until the morning, where he would leave the village behind. The boy was gone, without a trace. With this tragedy befalling the village, Mendez opened up the community to the outside world. With resources falling low, the village began accepting help from outsiders, leading to the development of the ironworks factory and fish farm. Valdelobos was thriving like never before. This openness also caught the attention of the nearby castle's inhabitants. Men and women clad in black robes would arrive, even planting a flag with a spider insignia in the center of town. These people were the descendants of an ancient cult known as Los Iluminados. Preaching of the madness that had plagued the townsfolk in the past, these zealots offered a cure to the village. Mendez, not wanting his people to suffer any longer, accepted the cult's help. After all, they were wearing insignias similar to the one his master wore all those years ago. The cult's injections poisoned the people of this town, increasing their madness. Many people would hear a commanding voice in their heads, eventually mutating into freakish monstrosities. Most of the children died shortly after getting injected. Makeshift headstones can be seen around Mendez's house. The young adults were taken to the castle, leaving the older folk to go insane. A few children actually bonded with the plaga, growing to incredible sizes. One case being the boss, the giant in the quarry. This creature ended up eating most of the livestock and even killing a few villagers. A flowery written poem can be found in the town's main church, describing a mother's love and living for its brothers and sisters who couldn't meet the grace of their newfound god. The mothers would sew new clothes for the giant as it grew. In the main church, many skulls line an altar, one of which is massive, a giant that never reached its full size. Before the ogre could do any more damage, Mendez managed to lock it away in the quarry, putting it to sleep with an incantation performed by a red zealot carrying a crimson-flamed staff. More on this later. Osmond Sadler, the cult's leader, would end up locking down the village, ordering any intruders killed on sight. This resulted in countless false ritual sacrifices. This title actually opens up with one of these rituals. We see a young girl being killed on an altar. These altars can be found all over the village. This ritual is depicted in cave paintings and can be seen as a sort of warning to any non-believers in the town square's church. One of the puzzles requires 2 stone heads that you have to decapitate. These are the apostate and blasphemers' heads. What's crazy is we can actually find the girl from the intro cutscene. She's dead on an altar near another dead and bound woman. These two were mentioned by the police officers that Leon came into town with. All throughout the game, you can find skulls everywhere in the village. One horrifying detail is in the underground sewer tunnel, you can actually see modern-looking items and clothing, likely possessions of people who wandered a little too close to this town. To think these innocents were murdered and then discarded with the trash is so sad. Towards the end of chapter 5, you can explore more of Mendez's house. Decorating the walls are photos of the villagers, a lot of which have insignias posted over certain people. I think these people are those who have betrayed or didn't want to go through with the cult's infection. It's interesting how the Mendez diaries you find before gaining access to his attic are the ones describing the evil that's been taking place here. Once you get up to the attic, something incredible presents itself. In this dark, lonely space, we find a lot of personal belongings, lots of photographs, and even an old camera. Mendez actually had a hobby, taking pictures. He was so proud of his community that he wanted to chronicle everything that happened. In the back of the attic, we find a copy of that familiar photo found in the burnt lakeside house. On the back is printed, "The Navarro family." That curious, bright-eyed young boy who lived with his grandfather was Luis Serra. This next point is my personal headcanon, but I do believe Mendez still has most of his mental faculties. He remembers his people even in this new cult-fueled headspace. I think when Luis returned to the village, Mendez's guilt of not being able to do anything for the boy's grandfather kicked in. He recognized Luis and instead of killing him, hid him away in the basement of his childhood home. All of Mendez's belongings, his hobby, the memories of his people, all of it is hidden away in the darkest part of this giant house, hidden behind a secret lever in a room closed with an elaborate lock. An incredible way of symbolizing the lingering consciousness that remains in the minds of all infected hosts. When you finally get to face off against Mendez in the village's slaughterhouse, I didn't want to kill him. Reading through all of his chronicled history had me really empathizing with his struggle. This is a guy that tried to keep his people safe, but fell victim to an evil unlike any other. The way Leon and Ash have to run from his almost Mr. X-like chasing had me grinning from ear to ear. It had me wishing he was an actual pursuer in the village section. For as much as I felt for this guy, and as much as I didn't want to kill him, you can't leave someone in this kind of state. But man, does Remake Mendez go out in style.
You have done something.
The Mendez boss fight is not only more epic in its spectacle, but better designed overall. I was never a fan of the cramped original slaughterhouse, and how easily he'd go down to like 4 flame grenades. Actually having space to maneuver, seeing Leon parry and hit clean backflips while Mendez was actually throwing out readable attacks was blowing my mind. I love how the ferocity of this fight is like Mendez's own guilt and fiery passion burning out of him. The rage and anger of being betrayed by the cult and his god on full display. Before Leon leaves Mendez behind to burn with the rest of his village, he lets him go with one last soulful remark.
Give my regards to your god.
This is one of the most interesting changes to RE4's story that I'm not seeing a whole lot of people talk about. If you take the time to piece this together, you'll find a story that stands up there with some of the tales told in some of the classic Resident Evil games files. It's got a modern, Souls-like level of environmental storytelling. Piecing the story together with every bit of info was rewarding, especially since a lot of this stuff is missable. It paints such a vivid and tragic image of what life was like here right before it all fell apart. A human story about learning, desperation, and falling into darkness. Rest in peace, Big Cheese. Remember their smiles in photographs.
Leon! Leon! Quick! This place is coming down!
As Mendez fades away, Ashley gets us out of another tight scrap, breaking the only available window, freeing Leon from the burning building. She's just the best. Next up is the ominous castle, and as soon as we cross its bridge, we get a helpful call from Luis. He's got a special medicine for our duo that'll help fight their infection. Right away, we meet the Zealot-class enemies, droning zombie-like Ganado with more ferocious mutations. I really like how the Zealots have female troopers in their ranks now. The cult's really capitalizing on its diversity initiative. The crazy catapult set piece is virtually unchanged. I was so hyped seeing the first catapult cutscene clearly show you the red barrels, like in the original game. They never stood a chance against me. You can actually use the cannon and shoot at whatever you want, which is so sick. Heading inside, we meet the legendary Ramon Salazar.
Such a pleasure to finally make your acquaintance, Mr. Kennedy. Who the hell are you? Me? Oh, please, call me Ramon. And allow me to get straight to the point.
And yeah, I still love this goofy-ass character. Salazar kinda spills the beans on Sadler's plan, the infection of Ashley and sending her back home to infect everyone else, spreading his influence even further. I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but I kinda love Ramon Salazar. I think he's one of the funniest video game characters ever made, and Remake Salazar has me dying laughing whenever he shows up or just says anything. I don't know why, but everything he does makes me happy. Maybe it's because I never imagined seeing this little twerp looking this realistic. When he slams his little fist on the railing like he's embarrassed in front of his bug friends. And this camera angle, like, what? Capcom knew what they were doing. Also, this line lives in my head rent-free.
Salutations, Mr. Kennedy.
Are you ready to hand over the girl?
If this guy wasn't funny enough, you should see his hunky actor. I can't get over how Salazar is mocapped and voiced by Giga Chad tall guy, Marcio Moreno. I swear, video games are magic, and huge props to Marcio. Watch out for those eggs, dude.
Get it off. We're not gonna... Oh!
Don't do it.
Guys.
Don't do it.
Guys.
Nick, do not do it.
Marcio, I love you, brother.
No, do not.
They want
Fight me for real.
They want to see.
I'm gonna be so disappointed of you.
They want to see.
Don't do it. Oh, you suck. Wow.
Demonic George Washington aside, the remake castle is awesome. The original RE4's castle is my favorite part of that game, simply because I love gothic horror. Getting to explore an upscale castle right after a dirty village creates a really cool transitory vibe, going from down in the mud to being in a magical palace run by Napoleon and his bug buddies. Happy to say the remake castle is still fantastic, and is in fact my favorite part of this game. When RE8 was in its marketing hype cycle, a lot of people theorized that 8's art assets would be reused for a potential RE4 remake. After actually playing the game, that opinion became even more common amongst Resident Evil fans. It's funny keeping that in mind because Salazar's remake castle looks almost nothing like Lady D's. It's way more varied and honestly, just better. The rooms are more interesting, you spend more time in this place, and everything feels coherent and more interconnected, which isn't something I could really say about the OG RE4 castle. But at least they kept Salazar's weird roller coaster.
You don't get car sick or anything, do you?
You're about to find out.
I think we made it.
Looks aside, the castle still throws a ton of insanity at you back to back, but things are a little better paced, and like I said, coherent. You've still got your Garradors, Novis, Armaduras, and of course, Verdugos. The Garrador boss fight is a lot better due to its added variety. No bells in this particular encounter, but there are hanging chains for you to knock into. This aggroes the monster, which is like the opposite of how the original fight worked. I love how you can shoot him to death like in the original game, or use the new stealth mechanic to stab its back parasite. The Garrador also has a backstory, being one of the castle's torturers before getting infected. Imagine being such a menace that the castle staff had to sew your eyes shut to keep you from killing things. It's just so cool how the creatures of this game keep a bit of their human identities after their infection. There's also a cute line of dialogue if you bring Ashley down to the Garrador's den after you kill it.
Was this the animal?
No, you can't keep him.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Right after this battle, we solve a cool puzzle depicting the life of a knight clad in gold armor. You've got to match the right sword color for each sculpture, and yeah, this is actually that one room in OG RE4 with the gold and platinum swords. We also get to meet this gold knight first in Ashley's segment, where she dodges the armaduras, and then gets glared at by the golden knight itself. You can see its bright plaga eye follow her around the room. Leon puts an end to this guy in a super hard battle. He literally stingers at you like Dante. This puzzle helps break up the tension of the set pieces. No longer do you have to fight the Garrador and go straight into Waterhall. Speaking of Waterhall, this place is looking a little Moldy. I have questions and maybe a few theories later. Waterhall is still really challenging, with even more snipers. Great. I was surprised when I got to the Ashley Crank section, seeing that this part was exactly the same. It's still crazy. This is such an iconic room, so it makes sense that Capcom wouldn't mess with it too much. I do love how they trip you up though, with Leon having to do his own crank to complete the bridge to escape. Man, I can't get over the mold-drooling statues. This room was done so much justice. I love it. But yeah, big questions about what this liquid is. After this, we get another call from Sadler.
Instead of worrying about her, worry about your own skin. Foolish little lamb. Temperance, child.
Ashley.
We haven't even met this guy in person yet, and he's over here fully possessing poor Ashley. The idea of him speaking through her is so good. You get the vibe that he does this with weaker-minded individuals for intimidating others. It also speaks volumes about Ashley, that she's able to break out of this trance. But she did just stab Leon. Separated by a gate, Ashley runs off with guilt-stricken eyes. I like this scene a lot more than the original comedy routine Capcom was trying to get past us. Ashley running off for no reason, falling into a perfectly sized and fitted trap made just for her? What were we doing back in the day, Capcom? What is this? With no way to get to her, Leon goes further into the castle, where we come across a gruesome scene. Mummified zealots worshipping a fully transformed and almost fossilized mutated human. The visual is disturbing, but you get the idea that this level of the cult is the most fanatical, worshipping and wanting to become the parasite itself. Just outside of this room, a spooky gathering is taking place. The Red Zealot update is one of my favorite combat and lore additions. After completing his chant, every enemy mutates, making for true hell-on-earth situations. Since Leon has the Plaga in him, he's also connected to this chant, which gives him a serious headache, stunning him in place. It's pretty horrifying not being able to fight back when head eaters and blade tentacles come flying your way. Can you believe this is supposed to be that one room with the random Gatling gun guy? One of the most interesting things I discovered about this remake's handling of the Plaga is how light affects these hellish parasites. As we all know, bright light prevents a Plaga eruption and outright kills any exposed tentacles. I have a bit of a theory on how the color of light sources may have differing effects on an infected host. As we saw with the Red Zealot, his red flame actually powers up the parasites within severely infected hosts. Back in the village, we got to see one of these guys wake up the sleeping giant with a chant while waving this particular red lantern around. It's interesting how it doesn't really affect Leon outside of giving him a bad headache. I attribute this to him being freshly infected. Other colors like blue seem to freeze a Plaga host in its tracks. We get to see this in action during Leon's Plaga Knight battle. When you pick up the key item, it extinguishes the blue flames around the knights, waking them up.
Take this! Get away from Leon!
Okay, the way Ashley said that made me make the biggest frowny face out of love for her. She genuinely seems scared for Leon's safety. It's very cute. But anyway, these blue lanterns that Ashley uses are the same ones the merchant has on his table. When I noticed this, it finally clicked why this guy never gets attacked by any enemies. Furthermore, I believe the purple flames that you see outside of his shop ward off the infected entirely. The blue lanterns are like an extra layer of security in case a creature gets a little too close for comfort. In Ashley's amazing set piece, we have to free Leon from a locked cage, exploring a very 3.5 looking library. Ashley's only defense is a blue lantern that, yes, freezes Plaga Knights in place. I think I may have cracked the code on what Capcom's doing with the color of fire in this game, and I love it. It gives the Plaga an almost bio-magical quality that makes them feel otherworldly. It's like something you'd only ever find in an isolated place like this. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's back up a bit. As Leon makes it past the Red Flame Hell, a familiar, deadly presence is stalking our lead.
You can stop right there, Leon. Wouldn't make me use this, would you?
Well, after 6 years, that is one hell of a greeting, Ada.
You don't seem surprised. Interesting.
Try using knives next time. Better for close encounters.
Not a bad move. Very smooth.
So who are you working for this time?
Oh, Leon. You know I don't work in town.
When I first saw this scene, I was a little disappointed with how Leon responded to Ada here. Don't get me wrong, I love this scene a lot more than the original, where Leon seemingly discovered Ada's survival off-screen and even mentions Wesker. Like, how, bro? How did you know this? The president tell you your one-night crush was still alive? Leading up to this game's release, I was expecting to see Leon stunned at seeing Ada alive. The last time he saw this woman, she died in front of him. After thinking about this more, I actually like this scene a lot. Leon's reintroduction to Ada is harder. He's as confused as he should be, but he's not letting his guard down. He's not letting Ada get to him. This is a woman that used him to steal a world-ending virus. He's been thinking about this for 6 whole years. This version of Ada might be the person she actually was back in 1998. Her mask removed, finally showing Leon a colder personality that doesn't have to lie to him to get what she wants. I was baffled by Ada the first time I experienced her scenes, and while I still don't prefer this take on the character, I do think now her extremely dry demeanor and disconnected outlook does serve an interesting purpose in this story, one that makes us and Leon question her motives even more. Like, were we ever dealing with Ada in Raccoon City? One of the original RE3's epilogues is about Ada. It basically confirms that the woman that Leon partnered up with in RE2 wasn't even named Ada. As a shady spy, that name was more than likely one of her many aliases. I kinda get that same vibe from her in this remake. It's not what I wanted from this character, and it sure isn't what Leon was expecting, and I think that might be the point.
So, what's become of the Amber?
Sorry, nothing yet. But my little helper is creating quite the commotion. Everything will work out just fine.
As long as you can keep your dog under control.
He's a good boy. Predictable.
Fine. Keep your mutt. But don't come crying to me if you get bit.
So it is true. You working with Wesker.
Who's that ominous voice on the radio? Is that Alvin Basker? After Leon survives playing catch with a Lord of the Rings troll, he finally finds Ashley.
Stay back. I might hurt you again. I'm so scared. When that happened, I wasn't myself anymore. I was something else.
She must have been terrifying. I know.
You too?
It's okay to be afraid, you know. But you can't run. You gotta keep moving forward. We will beat this. Together.
I don't know if I can.
You can. Just give me a heads up before you stab me next time, okay?
Leon, thanks.
You'll have to excuse me as I wipe the tears from my face. I love the emotional team building on display here. I gotta hand it to Ashley's actor, Genevieve Buckner. Her performance is nothing short of amazing. You really feel the guilt in Ashley's voice this time around. Leon slipping back into his RE2R self, saying, "I bet it was terrifying," before comforting her, actually made me tear up. I gotta be honest, I really like RE2 Remake to 4 Remake's older brother Leon more than just cool dude Leon. Like we've covered at the start of this video, there have been many great portrayals over the years, but I think Nick Apostolidis, being a hardcore fan of Resident Evil and understanding Leon, he went into this game having that benefit of hindsight when it comes to the classic versions of the games he'd be reiterating on. It creates such a subtle and layered take where he manages to maintain his cooler Leon personality while being able to dip back into his more compassionate RE2 Remake self. Consistency isn't something we always get out of Resident Evil, but when we do, and Capcom cares enough to make these kinds of strong connections to the past, it's inspiring. Feeling the journey these iconic characters have gone through, reflected in the current story, makes them feel human. Right as the emotions hit their peak, here comes Luis, effortlessly slicing through the tension once again.
Where are you? Sorry, I screwed up. Come to my rescue, Prince Charming.
I'll show you charming, pal.
God, I love him. Just like the original RE4, as soon as we get Ashley back, she's taken away from us. Kidnapped by the one and only Verdugo.
You're next.
One of the most important things about Salazar's castle is its history. Behind a locked door rests a treasure trove. Inside, we find a complete history of the Salazar family. The first entry states the Salazar bloodline is ending. Ramon, the current Castellan, has come down with a life-threatening disease. Among the castle's staff, the boy wasn't well loved. Before falling ill, Ramon's power trips were frequent and ungodly, throwing acid in a servant's face after jokingly calling the boy Pulgarcito. Ramon's actions were unforgivable, but his mother, Catalina, couldn't let her son die, risking the loss of their royal family. Catalina welcomed the devil into their home. This devil was Osmond Sadler. Sadler told Catalina of a cure to Ramon's illness, infecting the child with a superior strain of Las Plagas. This would lead to the evil bastard child we know him as today. Ramon was the result of a family tree falling from grace for generations. The beginning of this bloodline, however, was a just one. Ramon's ancestors would do the impossible at their time, discovering the Plaga infection, actively fighting it off, and sealing it away under the castle. Reading about ancient knights fighting off demons, not understanding that what they were fighting was a biological parasite, is so cool. The BSAA of their time. Rulers like Count Gregorio and Hipólito were celebrated as heroes among this isolated part of Spain. The Salazar legend was even celebrated by families in Valdelobos, with the infamous Clockwork Castellan, which is literally the model of the Salazar Gundam that I hate so much from OG RE4. It's so funny how it's this game's collectible that you have to shoot. After the village was infected, notices started appearing around the town, ordering the destruction of these toys. Loyalty to the royal family was more than lost. Almost every ruler after Hipólito abused their wealth in some kind of way. Anyone who tried restoring the family's glory had either mysteriously died or were murdered. One interesting figure was Gregorio II, a mad architect who wasted his entire fortune building all of the crazy traps and mechanisms littered throughout the castle. I love how Capcom actually explained this place's goofy architecture. I will admit, when I read this, I thought to myself, they're not gonna bring back the Gundam, are they? Please. God, no. Ramon's father, Diego, was murdered by Sadler. With Sadler's healing of Ramon, the demon child trusted his new father figure completely. Ramon let the cult run wild to the Plaga locked under the castle. Various digs and excavations would take place, even recruiting outsiders to the cause. As miners dug into the earth, Plaga hives were uncovered. These hives would emit spores, infecting the workers instantly, creating more faithful servants to Sadler. One of the castle's researchers, a man by the name of Isidro Talavera, assimilated to Las Plagas as the cult moved in. This guy was obsessed with the bugs dug up from the countless excavations. Ramon's mission for this loyal scientist was to improve on the human form using the Plaga. In the depths of the castle, Isidro discovered a strange black liquid. Using this substance accelerated the parasite's growth. With this miracle water, this very moldy-looking water, Isidro developed a new breed of parasitic life he dubbed U2, or as Ramon called them, Novistadors, a lesser but plentiful creature. After countless experiments over the course of years, this mad scientist managed to transform Ramon's housekeeper, Pesanta, into a monstrosity beyond human imagination, a perfect combination of human and insect DNA he called U3. Pesanta would serve as the Castellan's right hand. With a perfected U3 specimen created, Isidro decided to take the journey in his own evolution, becoming Ramon's left hand, the executioner, Verdugo. Finding Isidro's cold storage lab, Leon has to face off against this iconic monster. It probably won't come as a surprise, but Verdugo's boss fight is still amazing. You can still freeze the creature to slow him down and deal extra damage, but this time Leon can get caught in the coolant as well. When you freeze Verdugo, he looks like a mecha slowly approaching you. It's really scary and really cool. Literally. The added parry and dodge system make this boss fight feel like a legit anime battle to the death. I was reeling from how well thought out Verdugo's backstory was. I just can't believe they gave this guy a backstory at all. Like Mendez, I believe a part of Isidro is still inside of this creature, given how smart a stalker he happens to be. When you finally shatter this fool to pieces, we can find Isidro's monocle in his remains. I think it's super cool how this creature still carries around such a personal item like this. The mystery surrounding the U3s doesn't end here, and we still have to talk about Isidro's black liquid. Chapter 11 is probably my favorite part of this remake. As Leon delves deeper into the mines, he gets another mental transmission from Sadler. The elusive cult leader is speaking directly to Leon through someone else, but then shifts to speaking to this POV character.
My faithful disciple will show her the path. Go now. Deliver to these vagrant children their salvation. As you wish.
Oh man, the Reaper's coming. Jack Krauser, Leon's former major and second sensei.
I'll make it cheap for you.
Luis manages to suppress Leon's infection, and together the two get ready to save the stolen Princess Dulcinera. Leon's still in disbelief that an ex-Umbrella employee would want to help him. Luis reassures our lead that he just wants to feel better and make amends. What follows is a powerful adventure of brotherly love and bonding. So many of the set pieces from the original RE4 are repurposed with Luis, and good God, does this charming rogue make these moments so much better. First goal, clear the rock blockade in the mines. Heading into the main excavation area, we face off against the Chainsaw family, while TNT rains down from up above us. This part is so stressful with its tight paths and horde of enemies pressing you. After you clear the horde and the blockade with dynamite, Los Dos Gigantes show up. This armored giant is actually the one you play catch with on the castle walls. I guess he fell all the way down into these mines. What luck! This boss fight can play out in so many different ways. You can take both of these colossi down normally, dunk one or both of them into the lava, or take out the unarmored one and wait for Luis to get a bundle of dynamite, breaking some of its armor. You can also kill the armored giant while Luis is getting the dynamite, and when he shows back up with the explosives, he gets mad at you.
Leon! Over here! What? You didn't leave any for me?
It's interesting how all of this correlates to the story of Don Quixote. Luis loved that story as a kid and has sort of based his entire personality around it and its main character. Okay, I'll give you a very rough summary of this story. Don Quixote is obsessed with and researches the concept of chivalry by reading tons of romanticized books on the idea. He reads a few too many of them, cooking his own mind and tricking himself into thinking he's some kind of gallant knight that has to protect a princess. He explores the countryside with his partner, Sancho, which yes, is the nickname Luis gives Leon, which should show you who the real main character of this game is. The two get into various spats across the land and are generally menaces to their society. At one point, the Don even imagines a pair of windmills to be evil giants. Hey, that sounds familiar. Don Quixote eventually falls out of his delusion and retires the name, living out the rest of his life, up to his death as his true self, Alonso Quijano. Don Quixote is a very layered story that I can imagine Luis taking a more positive, follow your dreams reading of as a child, wanting to leave the village behind. As an adult, his take on the story was probably a little different. How his research at Umbrella pretty much ruined the world to be a reflection of Don Quixote getting into fights and annoying people for no good reason except his own curiosity that ultimately led to his blind hubris. Like the Don, Luis realizes this at the end of his life at Umbrella. It's time to make amends and continue living as the real man. I was so taken aback by Capcom perfectly integrating this classic story into RE4R's narrative that I wanted to reach out to Andre Pena, the guy who plays Luis, and get his very own take on how Don Quixote inspired Luis to leave Umbrella. Here's what he had to say.
I think that Luis is shaped unconsciously, and he clings on to that part of his childhood. The last moments in his life with any sort of normality, because it brings him comfort. At the same time, this unconscious obsession of his begins to leak into his real life, almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what makes Luis such a special character. Beautiful irony. El Don Quixote.
I am so glad Capcom's writing staff decided to show this inspiration and appreciation to such a classic story and its layered meanings fully in Luis's character, making this once shallow guy shine with the rest of his cast. Okay, now that we have the sadness behind us, by far the coolest set piece, and the one that got the biggest upgrade, is the minecart ride. I love the minecart ride.
I can't believe I'm doing this.
Hey, we're in a hurry, right? Oh, by the way,
What now?
hope you like thrill rides.
Please remember this quote for later. Whenever I got to this part in the original RE4, I never felt anything. At most, I'd be like, okay, minecart, here we go. Gotta make sure I shoot down the 2 chainsaw men before they get to me. I'll be honest with you guys, all of the original content that is in this one chapter is so much better than their 2005 counterparts. I never liked the mines in the original game, but yeah, this 2-part thrill ride is amazing. You have to keep the cart on its rails while shooting at miners in their own carts. You get to use Luis's godlike Red 9, which has infinite ammo, of course. I guess that explains why he never seems to run out of ammo. You also get to actually kill, and I mean kill, the chainsaw man here. If you manage to do this, something really interesting happens. The chainsaw man drops his chainsaw into the abyss below.
End of the line, asshole!
I'd like to point out that every time you kill this guy, his iron grip on that trusty saw is unbreakable. He will hold on to this thing even in death. Going back to that Did You Know Gaming video I narrated, a cut piece of lore in the original RE4 was that this guy was a rich doctor in the village. What if after every time you take this guy down, he literally healed himself? A figurative 9 lives that just ran out. Him dropping the saw is like a symbolic way of him losing his life force. Also, can I just highlight the amazing one-liner Leon drops here? As someone who's always been terrified by this guy, even in the original game, hearing Leon say,
End of the line, asshole!
was the ultimate form of catharsis for me. Yeah, that's right. End of the line, asshole. You're dead forever. Anyway, that's my chainsaw rant for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Oh.
You can see where they dug up the bugs.
Yeah, you're right, Luis.
Ahead!
You're kidding! Hit the brake! What? Jump!
Why does this cutscene have like Bayonetta energy? Luis is like Luca here. I love how Leon clearly expresses worry at Luis falling, but then he teases Leon, making our stubborn lead drop the caring act. It's very cute. The Leon and Luis bonding is great. It's clear that Leon doesn't fully trust this guy, but you can actually feel him unwinding at this point. Leon grills Luis as to what he's doing here, and the clever Spaniard finally lifts the veil on him working for the cult. Even with this info, Leon tells the disgraced scientist to get serious. If he really wants to make right by his dreadful actions, he's got to put his entire heart into this.
Gus, if we made it all this way, you know it means we're almost...
Almost what?
Luis!
Long time no see, rookie.
Major Krauser? What the hell? Why?
Recovering stolen goods. And killing a few rats along the way.
In shock, Leon puts it together that Krauser's the one who kidnapped Ashley. Krauser picks a capsule of the amber off of Luis, regaining Sadler's precious sample. Turns out Luis had it on him the entire time, but just wasn't giving it to Ada.
Not good.
It's not as cinematic as the original game, but I love the very real-looking knife fighting, partially because I'm a knife nerd myself, but also because it creates an imposing vibe going from real knife fighting to Krauser super kicking Leon 20 feet through the air. No more QTEs for this moment, just a much improved actual boss fight where we go knives only. During the fight, Leon questions his fallen major as to why he's working for the cult. Krauser responds with Operation Javier, a series of Black Ops missions that ended poorly. Leon and Krauser's mission is actually playable in Resident Evil: The Dark Side Chronicles, the Wii railgun shooter. On one of the missions, Krauser's entire unit was wiped out. Labeled as killed in action, the US government then covered it up. This battle is pure fun and fan service, a culmination of all of the parrying you've been doing up to this point. Like in the original game, Krauser overpowers Leon. Right before delivering the killing blow, Luis saves the day, but he isn't looking good at all.
Enough play, rookie. You haven't changed a damn bit. What a disappointment.
Not looking good, eh, my friend? And such a loss to the ladies of the world.
Don't talk.
Take this. The key to my laboratory. Go there and remove those damn parasites. Help Ashley. You know, I led a pretty shitty life. But now, eh? What do you think, Leon? People can change, right?
Luis Serra went from almost nothing goofball character who dies by demon dick to one of the most well-written and tragic characters in this entire franchise. I know Capcom wanted to play up the sadness, but I wish Leon could have told him that he did change. I can't help but feel sorry for this guy. He seems to have had a double change of heart going against whatever deal he had made with Ada. Maybe seeing Leon and Ashley actually pulling through this disaster inspired him to want to help them and maybe make it out alive with them, the obvious right path, instead of continuing whatever shady life he may have had following Ada. Imagine growing up in an isolated community far from any modern civilization. Imagine losing everything you love in one night. Imagine moving into the big, scary, unknown modern world, only to fall into an evil bioterrorism machine. Imagine causing a city to be nuked, killing millions of people. Imagine then moving back home, only to be tricked into working for a crazy cult, then dying in the village you tried so desperately to get out of. Guys, I'm not crying. It's just the pure white rain, okay? Massive shoutouts to Capcom's writing staff. You guys seriously need to write every Resident Evil game going forward. And yeah, the biggest shoutout goes to Andre Pena. You did this man too much justice. Luis hands off the key to his lab located on Sadler's Island base. Leon must be the most conflicted he's ever been. His thought-to-be-dead major shows up out of nowhere, kills his new best friend, a guy who is trying to turn over a new leaf, and that we all just fell in love with. This has turned into a rescue and revenge mission now. As Leon leaves the stalwart knight behind, Ada gives him a call. It turns out Ashley's being taken to Sadler's Island in an exchange from Ramon to Krauser. Getting to Sadler's clock tower, we're introduced to the Gundam. I couldn't believe it. I was taken aback playing this more realistic version of RE4 and then getting slapped in the face with the Twilight Zone once again. This statue is Capcom taking both of the dumbest things from original RE4 and combining them, the Salazar Gundam and the fire-breathing dragons. Now we have a fire-breathing Gundam. Great. Believe it or not, but I actually like this Gundam. For one, it isn't the size of a skyscraper, and two, the best part about it is you can destroy it, which is something I've always wanted to do personally. Getting to the top of the tower is where we finally face off against Ramon.
Ashley! Such a fool, Mr. Kennedy. To
have been bestowed with lore settlers.
You talk too much.
It failed.
You vulgar,
Utterly uncivilized. Mongrel.
What a Giga Chad Leon is. I love tired Leon so much. He doesn't have to act overtly cool all the time. He can emote when it matters, and also shoot these parasitic idiots in their faces like the cowboy he always should have been. So the puzzling thing about this scene is, unlike the original game, Salazar mutates by falling into what looks like the mold from RE7 and 8. The other Verdugo is no longer involved and seemingly disappears. Isidro's files talked about using the black liquid to create his monsters and also accelerate the infection. I'm not sure if Capcom is trying to link RE4 to 7 and 8, but I will say, Sadler does talk to his subjects in their minds like Evelyn does in RE7. Maybe it's a coincidence. Leon can even call Ramon a moldy bastard during this fight, but that's optional, and maybe he's just, you know, making fun of his looks. This black liquid can be an entirely different thing, but the resemblance is undeniably uncanny. Whatever the case may be, we don't get a clear answer in this game. That being said, the actual boss fight is great. Salazar is the hardest boss in RE4R, and also completely redesigned. In the OG RE4, Salazar was basically a wall demon. He had his giant tentacles and Verdugo head that would eat Leon in one bite. This time, the fight is essentially a cat and mouse game, where Leon is the mouse and Ramon is a giant gliding rat with wings that won't leave us the hell alone. The song that plays here is so dramatic and theatrical. It's actually my favorite track in this entire game. Leon and Ramon even recite the classic play and script dialogue from the original RE4. This fight also has a lot of narrative significance, with pretty much how all of what Ramon says here is pure projection about his childhood. He calls Leon Pulgarcito, which is the very light tease that one servant called Ramon before he splashed acid in her face. He calls Leon a bastard, and also a small demon child. It's kind of depressing, but Ramon was never a good person, even before he got infected. So I have no problem taking him down with style. It's so cool having to hide underneath the architecture. Staying still means death, so moving at the speed of light and dodging Sal's literal mold laser is key. After taking out B. Arthur, Leon spots Krauser leaving with Ashley in a very fancy speedboat. Making it down to the castle's dock, we meet up with Ada as she drives us over to Sadler's private paradise. This scene is something I've always wanted out of RE4. It's really awkward how in the original game, Leon just sits here silently with Ada. I mean, this is also the same guy who apparently found out she was alive off-screen, so whatever, I guess. Anyway, in the good version of this story, Leon grills Ada about what happened 6 years ago.
I have something to ask you, but I don't think I'll get a straight answer. Raccoon City. You know, after the incident, the world changed. Try to save one person, 100 others die. I guess I changed too.
You haven't changed. You just think you have.
Have you changed, Ada? Or are you just trying to use me again?
What do you think? We're here. Don't think too hard, handsome. See you later.
Story of my life.
It feels like this is the moment where Leon is officially done with this woman. His trust for her is gone. Clearly she's only here to get something, so it's best not to try rekindling anything. When I first got to the island, scaling the rock faces and hearing the remixed infiltration theme ringing out under the sounds of the atmospheric waves crashing against the shore, winds howling, it had me thinking, oh no, the island's gonna be amazing. Then I saw the entire oil refinery come into view off in the distance. Like the lake and Salazar's castle, this is fantastic foreshadowing of what's to come. I was so pumped for the worst part of the original RE4 for the first time in my life. And yeah, the remake island is just fantastic. The first thing we see is Ash being carried inside and knocked out. By the way, they took JJ, that stupid giant Gatling gun guy, and made him a beast man with an auto crossbow. Another example of taking things that stood out awkwardly in the original game and making them more coherent with the overall horror theme this title's been giving for its entire duration. The original island's major problem was its poor pacing. It feels like you're playing it for far longer than it actually is. You basically go from one set piece to boss encounter after another, and it all feels a little too slapped together and random. This has been refined greatly in the remake. A lot of classic areas are here, but play backwards. On the original island, all of the lab-like rooms were very thrown together, as if they moved all of this equipment in unprofessionally and frantically. That same vibe is here, but since Luis was ex-Umbrella, things look a little more polished. But yeah, walking through these tight halls and seeing the lab equipment on top of what these rooms used to be is still super cool. An entire section of the island did get cut out, the out-of-nowhere Matrix-inspired laser corridor and original U3 boss fight. I have a theory that both of these things will come back in separate ways. Like we discussed before, the Verdugos have been retconned into U3s. The other Verdugo just disappears from this game. I have a feeling that Ada will be battling it after it mutates further into the U3 that we all remember. If you look at Verdugo's face in this game, there is a slight resemblance to the original U3 there. The giant door from the original game that you'd come out of after the U3 fight is still in this game, but you can't open it. I think all of this is more than enough evidence that Ada's story will see this disgusting scorpion come back. Can you imagine soaring through those weird storage crates and flipping through lasers? It would probably feel way more appropriate playing as Ada. The regenerators are, of course, amazing. Capcom didn't touch these wrinkly creeps designs or voices. I will say I think the new build-up to them is a lot weaker than classic RE4. In the original, everything was so off as soon as you entered the room. The vibe was against you. Even the camera was more zoomed in to emphasize the eeriness of this room. Something was lying in wait. Here, the environment looks amazing, but is just dark. Seeing the regenerator standing still and then run off looks very silly. The build-up just isn't the same. With that said, I really liked battling these things. The new parry system works really well against them, slicing their limbs off, saving your ammo. Just like the original game, you actually have to run away from something for the first time after hours of slaughtering tons of ganados. The X-ray scope makes short work of these things, but you can also peel away their rotted flesh, revealing the squirming parasites hidden under the surface. It's awesome how you now have a few options in dealing with these things. There are also so many more regenerators in the lab now than there used to be. There's a room where you have to upgrade a keycard's security clearance, and when you walk into it, you're greeted to 4 sleeping regenerators. Like, good God, Capcom, leave me alone. When we find Ashley, Leon sits by her bedside until she wakes up, gun at the ready. When Ashley awakens, Leon lets her know about Luis.
Thank you. We brought the medicine just in time.
Can you stand?
Where's Luis?
He was worried about you. Till the end. Come on. We don't have much time. Let's get rid of these things.
For Luis.
Despite not having many scenes together, it feels like Leon, Ashley, and Luis are a real trio, a squad just trying to survive. I love how the characters are so invested in each other's survival, too. Luis, in his dying moments, begs Leon to save Ashley. And when Ashley comes to, she's worried about Luis. It's just really human and really cute. Leon calls up Ada, asking her where Luis's lab might be. Since these two were working together behind the scenes, she tells Leon about Sadler's private sanctuary built into the cliffside. The major Plaga researchers were all kept as close to Sadler, making sure they didn't do anything to betray him. As we explore this island, the files written by the scientists Sadler hired shed a ton of light on the Plaga, talk of an inferior and superior strain of the parasite, explain why the Ganados remain single-minded in their devotion. The inferior Plaga damages the brain of a host, making it more susceptible to orders. Others like Mendez and Salazar were blessed with a sort of superior strain. Sadler, getting whatever master control parasite, preserved his mind, which means he isn't being mentally affected by anything, which also means he is genuinely insane. This allows for a sort of mental connection to any inferior hosts, which is everyone that isn't him. Leon and Ashley must have a strain similar to the one Mendez got, as they're able to fight back for longer than the Ganados. It also makes sense to have Ashley be relatively normal on her way back home, as to not arouse suspicion before infecting her family. The writer of one of these files almost sort of transforms into Sadler herself towards the end, as if he's writing through her about making the cult rise back to its former ancient glory. Moving on, a few original island set pieces are combined. The on-rails Ashley truck drive and the wrecking ball part are now Ashley driving a crane with a wrecking ball on it. Yes, they still don't explain how she's able to do this, and the cutscene is pretty funny.
I got this.
You're serious? Is this what they teach kids in school these days?
Have you never heard of driver's ed? Get back.
I really liked the new wrecking ball part. It's another moment that sees Ashley shine. You've still got to keep an eye on her HP though. The part where you have to crawl around in the sewers is pretty sick too. One regenerator evolves into an Iron Maiden, and when this happened, my jaw hit the floor. It's one of those things when you're in the moment, you don't remember all of these classic creatures until they show up shocking your soul out of your body. After surviving the pits of hell that are the island's sewer, Ashley and Leon finally meet Sadler face to face.
Welcome, my children. I am Osman Sadler, the speaker for our Lord.
Tell someone who gives a shit.
Now, abandon your body. Obey. Obey the voice of our Lord. Sweet child, do not resist. Pray forgive these wicked sinners, body, and release yourself from fear.
First of all, Giga Chad Leon strikes again. Finally, he just shoots this fool. I love how tired Leon is of these people at this point. Second, Sadler is hella intimidating. I love how late in the game we meet him. The build-up pays off with this incredible scene. Third, Ashley is so strong. This young, first world problems, untrained civilian fights for her life. She actually holds off Sadler's control, unlike in the original game, where she turns immediately. Fun fact, the gun jams due to her limp-wristed grip. Her struggle ended up saving Leon's life. Now that we finally met this guy, Sadler's family tree is featured all throughout the island in ancient headstones with names and messages about the clan's history. After being defeated, the Sadlers were exiled to this island, longing for the day when their power can be restored by the Plaga. They seem really into these sacred insect gods, often referred to as the Holy Body. There's an ancient hall we can explore with giant statues in different states of disrepair. One of these statues is even chained up. These were all former leaders of the cult. It's like the antithesis of the opulent lineage of the Salazar house, where that family started off strong and then gradually fell from grace. Sadler's was downtrodden from the get-go for their obvious, ridiculous belief system. A file found later on talks about how the Sadlers took advantage of the island's people, convincing some and forcing others into the cult. You can actually track the history of influence going from this island, building their forces, taking the castle, bringing people in from the outside, and then eventually having their second home base in Valdelobos. I'd like to remind everyone that none of this is in the original game. It makes me so very happy finally getting some answers to questions I've always had for years. Like, who are these people? Where did they come from? I never really thought about the original Sadler. He kinda just came off like an idiot, leaving files around just explaining all of his plans. Like literally the things that would happen in the rooms that you were about to enter. This time, Sadler comes from a long line of people who all drank the Kool-Aid. He will have his buggy dreams come true. After Ashley gets taken away once again, we come up to an ancient structure surrounded by military tents. A file can be found talking about Krauser's involvement, building up the island's defenses. In another tent, we find a lot of the Major's possessions, the tags of his fallen men, a photo of a younger Leon that I presume he carries in his wallet at all times. We find a newspaper article talking about the Operation Javier cover-up, and a very detailed account of Ashley's capture, which I found disturbing. It's a little too real reading each step of Krauser's kidnapping plan. There's also a cassette tape recording that tells Leon where to go to find his disgraced major. Krauser's got one final lesson prepared for Leon. Sounds hot. Krauser taunts Leon as he approaches the ruins. Leon remains stone-cold focused until Krauser says this.
You can't save her. You can't save anyone.
Give it up, Krauser!
I'm sure when he started his military service, Leon probably told Krauser all about the tragedy of Raccoon City. The perfect ammo this lost version of Krauser would use against Leon. This upgraded boss fight is sick. While laying down heavy pressure, Krauser pokes at Leon's wounds, bringing up Ashley and his and Leon's past.
You better hunt him. Who knows what's become of the girl? You remember the fight in the jungle? We barely made it out alive.
Go with your gut, don't think. That was the first thing you taught me.
I'm no stranger to covert tactics, remember?
How can I forget? Shit.
I admit, you've done well to stay alive this long.
I'd be dead if I kept listening to people like you.
What I really loved about this fight was how it all feels like Leon's trying to talk Krauser down from his insanity. What his government did to him, destroying his trust and life, was an unforgivable sin. He's out for revenge, to become more powerful than the US could ever be. In his rage, Krauser doesn't see how the cult's actually manipulating him. After Krauser mutates, he pretty much loses it.
That's the difference between you and me, Boogie. Time to finish your training. Witness the power!
You've lost it completely, Krauser.
When I got to the second phase of this fight, hearing this military veteran go off about what strength means to him and the concept of controlling total power, it made me kinda sad. Leon's really trying in this moment, but Krauser isn't listening.
Strength is everything. We can protect nothing.
The way you're going, there won't be anything left to protect. You'd have known that once.
That's where you're wrong. I didn't know a damn thing. Now I do.
He sounds desperate. It was honestly giving me some flashbacks to my own life. Members of my family who had served in the military and who saw combat that felt discarded after their service, either not getting any government aid or suffering from severe PTSD. They'd oftentimes sound like this. The way Krauser shouts about Uncle Sam abandoning him and feeling powerless is a very real thing for a lot of servicemen and women. He wants his new life path to work, but his own trauma's getting in the way. I think as the fight goes on, Krauser slowly realizes that it's not going to end well. Leon starts all of this being saved by Marvin, getting his knife but losing the man who had lost everything. A bleak reflection of what Leon could have become if things had played out differently, if he had arrived at Raccoon City earlier. Stricken with this guilt, Leon takes his lieutenant's memory with him on every mission. In a new life, Jack Krauser trained Leon, showing him a path where he could make a difference in the world. Leon loses Krauser, only to get him back but twisted with his own anger and insecurities, joining a cult that has taken so many innocent lives. In death, Krauser realizes what he's turned into, bested by his student dropping the rookie nickname and acknowledging him as the better person he was training him to become.
Do what you have to do. That's right. I trained you well. Leon.
I was surprised seeing Leon actually take Krauser's life, but there was no way he could leave him like this. Leon's quivering lip says all we need to know. It was here when I realized what Capcom was doing with Leon, using the losses he suffered in Raccoon City to fuel this game's story, only to have every person he meets die one by one. It creates an even harder, more heated focus on saving Ashley after all is said and done with Krauser. All of these lives can't be lost in vain. They weren't all bad people. Just like 6 years prior, another fallen teacher passes on his blade, another soul Leon won't ever forget. As Leon walks away, he reflects on everything that just happened, the bridge closing on this chapter of Leon's life. We're almost to Sadler's hideout. One final effort stands between us. The Mike part is amazing. A lot like the Village's bell, Mike saves Leon in gameplay.
What was that?
This entire set piece has a level of urgency that wasn't present in the original. The hard-hitting drums of this incredibly remixed song had my blood pumping. When I heard the original melody of the track return from the 2005 version, I literally said out loud, "I love the island."
Shit, my body armor.
This is the type of high-action set piece that had me thinking, come on, Leon, we gotta save her. We will save her. That's how excited all of this was getting me.
Nice and slow. What? Damn it!
After Mike gets taken out, a similarly overwhelming battle takes place at the foot of Sadler's sanctuary, where what seems like every enemy type is here to stop you from saving Ashley. Getting past this, we finally reach Baby Eagle. Sadler stops Leon in his tracks, but still can't break through to him. Just when it seems like Sadler's getting somewhere, Ada saves the day. What follows is a scene that made me feel like I was a kid again. Leon carries Ashley to Luis's lab, a lab that is deeply hidden in this ruinous palace. It goes to show how highly Sadler valued Luis and his team's research. In this final walk to the lab, we see Leon and Ashley covered in parasitic veins, a visual I had always fanfictioned about for the original RE4. Leon sees himself sinking into the dark waters of Sadler's influence, but even in this delusional state, he fights on.
Still you resist, child.
The infection taking a stronger hold on his mind, Leon begins seeing ghostly zealots, something he'll become if he doesn't push through. This entire scene of Leon fighting Sadler's corruption, falling to a knee but getting back up had me cheering. Don't give up, Leon. You could do it. You have to understand something. This is my guy. He was my intro to this series back in 1999. Seeing him fight his way out of every situation and then struggle like this is not only something I've always wanted out of this particular story, but it reminds me of the feelings I had the first time playing these games back in the day, overcoming probably the most impossible threat, mind control. It's inspiring. The power of the human spirit beating out some scientifically fueled parasite. It had me raising the roof. This set piece is then punctuated by one of the coolest contextual cinematic to gameplay things I've seen in a while. Clicking on the door to Luis's lab pulls up the keys menu. Us, the player, have to use Luis's key as if this is normal gameplay. This part could have been a cutscene, but using RE4R's video gameness to make you feel like you're in this moment with Luis holding yours and Leon's hand to open the final door to safety is so beautiful.
This time, it has to be different.
You go first.
No way. Like I told you, I'm gonna get you home safe. Here goes nothing.
This scene is admittedly hard to watch. Ashley's hellish screaming haunts my nightmares, but what made me actually tear up was Leon falling out of his chair, barely alive, just to hold Ashley's hand so she's not going through this pain alone. I said it before and I'll say it again, this is the most compassionate Leon of all time, and I love him. As Leon awakens, we see Ashley Plaga-free. She managed to get Leon in place for the Plaga removal laser as well.
Hey, we're a team, right?
Keep this up, I'll be out of a job.
Literal perfection. In Luis's lab, we find some groundbreaking information. Firstly, we find a photo of Luis's team. He was a member of Umbrella Team 6. If you're unaware, Team 6 are responsible for the creation of someone you may know. Luis Serra created Nemesis. I repeat, Luis Serra is the father of the coolest Resident Evil monster. I'm glad Jill never met this guy. She'd probably throw hands on sight. I can't believe how well connected all of this is. I never thought I'd see RE4 get this level of lore connecting tissue to the rest of the series, but here we are, and I'm in love. On the computers and document printouts, we learn about the different methods of removing the parasite, all deeply researched options that Luis developed himself. Luis's conversations with Ada, promising safe transport in exchange for a sample of the plaga, are all cataloged as well. Not really a surprise, but Luis never trusted Ada, and thought of multiple ways to sweet-talk her out of getting the amber. We also read about his change of heart, going from Umbrella researcher to wanting to save the world from Sadler's potential influence over the human mind. All of the equipment in this makeshift lab is from Umbrella. Luis brought it all with him. The only reason why Leon and Ash are standing is because of Luis, an ex-Umbrella employee. Even in death, his influence is felt. Leon never lets go of the people he's lost on his adventures, holding onto Marvin's knife, Kendo's gun, Krauser's blade, and now Luis's key. Even though his loss was immense, this legend lives on in our surviving heroes. Even though he'll never know it, he saved the world. Leaving Luis's legacy behind, we emerge onto a sketchy scene. Ada's been apprehended.
Ada!
Jesus, Leon. She could have broke her hip or something. A swarm of Novistadors catch Leon off guard as Sadler appears, choking him out. Ada comes to the rescue, and together, my one true pairing, light this fool up. Harkening back to RE6's best moment, this cutscene had me cheering. I was so hyped. I also like how Leon and Ada don't speak in this moment. They have sort of an unspoken bond.
You have forsaken holy body. The bright gift you require absolution.
As Ada runs off to get some superior firepower, Leon takes on Father Sadler once and for all. Sorry, Lieutenant Branagh, it's Major Krauser's time to get a little payback. I love using Krauser's knife in this Sadler boss fight. So the fight is still not really my cup of tea. It's a lot like the original battle, but the arena is much bigger. Sadler's got all of his attacks plus another mold laser. What's that about, Capcom? And Novistadors show up to annoy. Overall, still a cool fight that actually has a new second phase. This Worlds of Flesh is similar to the Hive Mind boss fight from Dead Space 1. Super random, but I guess Capcom was doing their research. Just sidestep those tentacles and you're good. Ada eventually shows up delivering the victory rocket just as she did 6 years ago. Like, if this game wasn't good enough, we get a symbolic Devil May Cry tier kill, where Leon uses Sadler's Master Control Parasite Staff, the thing Sadler's used to control the minds of so many people, to end this fool's life forever. I don't care what you have to say. This game is brilliant.
Ada, what the hell are you doing?
Nothing personal, Leon. Luis and I had an arrangement. Don't worry, I'll take good care of it. Ride's here. You coming?
I think we both know this is where we go our separate ways.
Oh, snap. It's coming. I don't know if I'm off base here, but it kind of seems like Leon's done with Ada. He seems so over her manipulation. And the way he responds to Ashley about not knowing where Ada's off to just makes it feel like he's respecting himself a little more than previous versions of this character. No, she's like a part of me I can't let go. Just a who knows. Anyway, Ada, being the sweet baby that she is, gets a ride out of here for Leon and Ashley. As we escape, we see Ganados freaking out on the floor out of control now that Sadler's dead. The hive mind is no more. Getting on the jet ski, we get one of the best lines in this game.
You like thrill rides? You're gonna love this.
I love how much certain people affect this version of Leon and how he holds on to their memories. It's so heartwarming. The jet ski ride had me smiling so hard. Hearing the epic music, seeing more of the island fly by, and hearing Ashley have the time of her life going off those ramps. By the way, you can still do the classic jet ski tricks. Capcom really cared, guys.
You alright?
I'm not sure, that was insane. Mission accomplished, right?
Mission accomplished. When you're home safe.
Thank you for saving me.
Hearing Ashley say the words, "Thank you for saving me," is the perfect cap-off to this story of loss and redemption. Despite all of the struggling, Leon finally did it. The classic credit sequence is reimagined as Mendez's somber photo gallery. We get a full recreation of all of those iconic, dreamlike art panels in 3D graphics. Man, what a great game. I'm so happy that I finally have an RE4 with a good story.
Patch me through. I've obtained the amber.
Excellent.
Just one question. What are you planning to do with this?
We do not pay you to ask questions. All you need to know is a new dawn is breaking.
So yeah, the big stinger that made me and everyone else lose their minds. RE Engine Wesker. It's so surreal seeing this guy come back to life in this modern photorealistic style. There's a lot going on here in this small cameo appearance. If you look on his computer screens, photos of Excella, Chris, and the progenitor flower room from RE5 can be seen. Does that mean RE5 is next up on the remake chopping block? Only time will tell. I really loved Wesker's counterline that is basically the reverse of one of Leon's earlier quotes.
Try to save one person, 100 others die.
100 will give their lives so that just one may live. I am expediting that change.
So, we're talking millions of casualties.
Billions.
This is the moment Ada's change of heart fully set in. Seeing her longingly gaze down at Leon escaping gives off such a regretful vibe, almost like she knows Leon is moving on without her. Maybe she should have been more honest with him. I hope we learn more in her side of this story, but for now, we fly off into the sunset once again. I don't know if you've been able to tell, but I kinda love this game. It's everything I've ever wanted from RE4's narrative. I can't praise the writing staff high enough. They took a cast of characters while iconic were mostly one note and made them all grounded. Luis and Ashley really are the heart and soul of this story, and by the end, while it doesn't completely feel like Leon's mended his guilt, he was able to save someone in the face of extreme adversity, which says a lot about his growth of character. A lot of classic Resident Evil games give me that satisfying feeling of overcoming and never giving up, despite whatever's in your way. This game does that for me, but it being as well put together as it is has become one of my favorite Resident Evil stories. While I do love it a lot, not everything is perfect. I think some of the cutscenes don't get enough time to breathe. Sometimes you're in and out wanting more from a certain character or story event. I think Claire and Sherry not being mentioned by Leon in at least a file is kinda weird too. I've said it before, but I'm not the biggest fan of this Ada. I have warmed up to this take a bit more since release, but I just wish there was some more back and forth with her and Leon. I wish Krauser got one more flashback to fill out his role in the story better. And I know some people don't prefer this story or its characterizations for not being funny enough. Even though none of these games ever set out to be funny, the internet just kind of ruins everything. Original RE4's story especially never made me feel anything after I finished it. Even back in 2005, I was way more invested in its fun gameplay and replaying it over and over again for that reason. When it came to enjoying a video game story, I was playing other games for that at the time. I can't tell you how many times I've skipped OG RE4's cutscenes over the years. Having an RE4 with a legitimate heart and soul isn't a bad thing. This game doesn't remove or replace the original in any way. It doesn't damage its legacy. If anything, this remake likes classic RE4 a little too much. Most Resident Evil games, hell, most games in general, never get a single tear out of me. This game did, and I really wasn't expecting to feel as much as I did for these characters. And honestly, I'd much rather have an RE4 that makes me feel something over an RE4 that makes me laugh. However you feel about it, there's no denying the love and care that went into this reimagining. Every part of it feels carefully crafted in a way that we haven't seen since RE7. RE4 Remake genuinely feels like the story we should have gotten after Resident Evils 1, 2, 3, and Code Veronica. While I still don't think this remake was entirely necessary for the culture of video games, like its source material was for pushing the industry forward, it's a game that I love a lot, and that I'm so glad I lived long enough to play. So that's RE4 Remake. A game that I will most likely sink the same amount of years into as I did the original RE4 and my other favorite Resident Evil games. Is it perfect? No, but nothing I love is. And that's how I like it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a Krauser to slay. Gotta be quick about it, because I'm all out of ballistics. That was so bad.